Hello everyone. Today we're going to start off with a new chapter, that is resources. You might be thinking, what does the term resource mean? The term resource means anything that can be used to satisfy a particular need is known as a resource. Probably the water that we drink, the air we breathe, that is a resource. So water, electricity, air, rickshaw, probably the vegetables, the fruits that we eat, all these are resources. So what are the characteristics of the resource? One, and the most important, they need to have a utility. What does the term utility mean? The term utility means usability. Probably if you have water, what is the use of water? We can drink. We wash our utensils, we wash our clothes. We use water for irrigation to grow crops. So water has a usability. So that is why water has a utility. The next point that comes into consideration, or the characteristic of a resource, is it needs to have a worth. That means a value. Okay. Every time we get water in our house, we pay a water tax. That actually shows that it has value. So even the vegetables that we buy, that has a value because we give money for it, right? So the vegetable that we eat, or the crops or the food grains that we eat, is basically has usability, that is the utility, and it also has a worth or a value, right? So in simple terms, utility means usability and value means worth. There are some resources that have an economic value. Say for example, vegetables. It has an economic value. But on the contrary, if you look at probably a beautiful sunset, or if you look at the greenery that is there after the first rains, can you put that into money? Can you actually trace out the economic value of this particular beautiful landscape? You can't, right? You can't count them in money. You can't count them into currency. So what happens? This is still a resource, because there are certain resources that do not have an economic value, but they are still useful for humankind. Now, when we look at probably when I was a kid, okay, when I was a kid, whenever I had a stomachache, my grandma used to come over with that small potli or small bag of medicines. These medicines used to be all home remedies. These home remedies probably might not have an economic value at the present time, because it doesn't have to be bought. But in the long run, if there is a pharmaceutical company, if that company goes ahead and takes over a patent, a trademark over that particular medicinal proportion, and puts up a name, they take up a brand, they make a brand, introduce into the market, so then it has an economic value. Even then, it is considered as a resource. Time and technology are basically two important factors that can actually change substances into resources. And both are related to each other. And most importantly, both are related to the needs of the people. If we look at people in themselves are an important resource. Each of the discovery that we had, probably the discovery of a zero, Aryabhatta actually invented zero. So this zero was a discovery that was possible because of humans. The wheel that was discovered by humans that actually helped us to go ahead and probably travel from place A to place B. Then they also invented electricity that made our lives easier. They also invented mobile phones, the internet connection, the television set, or the air conditioner. All these are human inventions. Let's talk about the resources. Now, the resources can be classified into three. First one is the natural resources. Second, human, and the third one is the human-made. Okay. The term natural. Let's start off with natural resources. The term natural means that whatever is given to us by the nature, and it is not being fidgeted around by the human beings, it is in its purest form. Before we go ahead further, okay, let me try to explain natural, human, and human-made. Okay, iron ore, it is naturally found, right? So what do we humans do? Okay, we people have the science and technology to go ahead and get the iron out of iron ore. So we use the human-made technology that is there, that we have developed over a period of time. So what do? We go ahead and take up the natural resources, that is iron ore. We use the existing the science developments, the technology, all these things, we put it together. We use that technology and actually get the iron from the iron ore, which is impure. Okay, this iron ore is later on used to go ahead and probably build factories or bridges. Now, what are the characteristics of natural resources? They are freely available. Second, it is naturally available. Okay, we do not have to go ahead and get them on our own, or probably we do not have to make them. For example is the air that we breathe, the soil that we get, the land that we have. These resources are basically free gifts of nature to us. In some cases, probably the tools and the technologies may be needed to use this existing natural resources. Just as I explained, the iron ore is actually, we get iron from the iron ore with the help of the tools and the technology that we have. So let's go ahead and understand the three types of resources, that is the natural, human-made and human resources, in detail. Let's come down to the natural resources. Natural resources are basically further subdivided into exhaustibility, development and use, the origin and the distribution. Let's come down to the exhaustibility. What does the term exhaustibility mean? Probably something that either exhausts or it does not exhaust. If you have to put it in simple terms, exhaust means something that gets over or gets finished. So the first one under that subdivision is renewable resources. Now, if we go through the renewable resources, for example, the wind that we have, okay, or probably the electricity that we have, or probably the air that we breathe, all these are renewable resources. Okay, you might have seen a river flowing, right? When the river flows, does it happen? Okay, there is a wave, or probably if you look at the sea waves, there is a wave that comes and dashes across the coastal area, and then it stops. It waits for the second wave to come. Does the whole sea stop? It doesn't, right? There is a constantly coming and going of the sea waves. It is a renewable resource. It comes and it goes. Okay, in the same manner, the electricity, it comes, and it doesn't go back. It just continues. Okay, every time we use it, there is something else, electricity that is produced at some other end. Now, non-renewable resources. There are certain resources that actually occur, or probably they are produced over a long geological period of time. Probably it takes millions of or hundreds of millions of years to go ahead and produce that. We can actually give example of coal or the natural gas, or the fossil fuels, the petrol that we use. All these actually take hundreds of millions of years to be produced. Let's come down to the second subdivision, that is the development and the uses. In this, we're going to talk about the potential resources, and the second one is the actual resources. Let me give you an example to understand this easier. If you look at your class, okay, probably one fine day your teacher calls you up, okay, and tells you, you know what, I know that you have that capability to go ahead and get 70% in your exams. Okay, now what does the term capability mean? It means the potential of a student. Okay, now how can we get that potential or the capability out of that student is by going ahead and probably revising or learning your chapters properly and doing good in your exams. But that person has to have that inbuilt potential or that inbuilt ability to go ahead and study, or probably a good grasping power. So that means the student has potential. Then the actual resources. When if you have to correlate the term actual with the student, probably the student is actually having a very good intellectual power to go ahead and understand the subject properly, and they can put it down on the paper during the exams, and that person can actually score very good marks. Now let's understand, on the basis of this example, your potential resources. What does the term potential resources mean? The entire quantity might not be known, and it is also not being used presently, but these can be put in use with the existing technology or the tools and the development that we have. All right. So say for example, there's uranium that is found in Ladakh. Okay, we know that Ladakh has that potential, but we do not have the existing technology to actually get that uranium out. One more example that you can also give about Ladakh is one place that has a very good cultural heritage. So if there is proper transportation, probably you can get, India as a country can get a lot of revenue because of tourism. But that has to develop with the help of the technology. Let's come down to the second one, that is the actual resources. The term actual resources means the quantity is known and it is presently put in use. Okay, that is what is basically development and use of natural resources. On that basis, it is classified. The third one is the origin. When we come down to origin, it is basically divided into two, the biotic and the abiotic. Biotic means living organisms, anything and everything that has life. Probably the plant life, the animal life, and the human beings. All are included into biotic. And the abiotic basically is a non-living things. The roads that we see, the buildings that we see, the rocks, the stones, all are a part of abiotic, natural resources. The last one on the list to come up is the distribution. According to this distribution, it is further subdivided into ubiquitous and localized. Now, the ubiquitous basically means that the resources are found everywhere. Say the sunlight, it is found everywhere. The air that we breathe, it is found everywhere. And the localized means a particular mineral is found in a specific area. Say for example, iron ore is found in a specific area. That's what means localized. These are the classification of natural resources. Let's come down to the second resource, that is the human-made resources. As I already explained, human-made resources, the term human-made means something that is made by the people, by the humans. Okay. Sometimes the natural substances, they come resources only when the original form has been changed to something that we can use. Iron ore, it was not a resource until people learned the way how to extract it and how to extract and get iron. This iron can be used to go ahead and build factories, probably the roads and the bridges. People use natural resources to make these things, and that is why it is known as the human-made resources. The roads, the bridges that we have, all these things are human-made resources because it is made by human. Technology, okay, the science and the development is also human-made resource, without which we human beings wouldn't have been able to survive. The third out of the resources is a human resource. People can actually make the best out of the natural resource that they get, all right? But they need to have that knowledge, the technical know-how and the skill set to go ahead and use that resource. And that is why human beings are actually known as a resource. People are human resources. The education, the health facilities and all these things actually help us to maintain a good standard of living and also help us to make a valuable resource, people as a valuable resource. Improving the quality of life and the people's skills so that they are able to go ahead and create more and more resources. That is how the human resource develop. That is what is the human resource development. Human resource development. Human, that is people, people's resource and the development. Say for example, if your parents wouldn't actually send you to schools, okay, would you be able to go ahead and understand how much is say 1 crores? You wouldn't have been able to. If just because you study, you grow, when you grow up, you go ahead and start working. When you start working, that is when you go ahead and add that quality to whichever organization you work for, or probably if you set up your own business, you get something new into the market. What is happening because of the educational facilities that we have, we just improving the quality of the human resources. Now, we also have to understand a term, stock of resource. It is basically the amount of resources that is available for use. Let me give you an example. Say for example, in your family, your mom and dad both work, alright? Every month they chip in a specific amount out of their salaries, out of their incomes put together, and they use to go ahead and pay off the expenses. Out of the total money, say for example, they chip in say 30,000 rupees. Out of that, 20,000 is being used up to go ahead and pay off the expenses. 10,000 is left over. That acts as a stock, that is the available resource to go ahead and that is available for use. There's one more term that we also need to know is the sustainable development. What does the term sustainable development mean? Balancing the needs to use resources and at the same time to go ahead and conserve the resources for the future generation. Let's try to understand sustainable development in detail. What happens when we do not take care of this? Say for example, we go ahead and start cutting trees, right? When we start cutting trees, what happens? There is deforestation that happens. There are certain people who become rich and there are certain people who always remain poor. If you look at the world stats, the financial stats, 99% of the world's total money lies in the hands of 1% of the total population. Alright, why is that happening? It is just happening because of the simple fact that there are people who are just becoming rich. There are people who are already rich, they are just becoming richer. But people who are supposed to become at least climb down to the upper middle class, they are not even reaching that level. See, this is happening because of the simple reason. Say for example, I have 1 crore with me. I can easily invest into some other business, right? So when I do that, I have the chances to go ahead and earn more and more money. But on the contrary, if there are people who are poor, what happens is they do not have the existing capital to go ahead and invest that into their business. So then they have to survive based on whatever livelihood that they have. They should earn their livelihood out of their probably that work. Sustainable development. Now, the sustainable development, what generally people do is they go ahead and start cutting trees to go ahead and probably make paper, and they sell paper. But to make that paper, many trees are cut. So what happens? There is deforestation. When we go ahead and do that, we are not leaving a green future for our next generation. I'll give you an example of a village in Rajasthan. The village is it's known as Piplatri. Okay, over there, generally there are people in India. Whenever a girl child is born, they generally kill them. Alright, but this is one village in Rajasthan. Whenever there is a girl child born, the whole village comes together and they actually put in that they plant 111 fruit trees. When they go ahead and do that, they also promote ecofeminism. They're also taking care of Mother Nature. They're also taking care of their daughters. So they are basically looking at a sustainable development. When they pass out, then the next generation comes in place. They have a green future for themselves. That is what is sustainable development. So that is what we should learn from them. So what are the principles of sustainable development? The first one, respect and care for all forms of life. You have to respect the plants, you have to respect the trees, you have to respect the animals. What we do with the plants and the trees, we cut them down. What do we do with the animals? We actually hunt them down. Probably we export them to go ahead and get good money. We have to ensure that the quality of human life is improved, which is very vital. We have to conserve the earth's vitality and the diversity. We have to conserve our Mother Nature. You also have to take into consideration that you have to minimize the depletion of natural resources. Probably when we are traveling from our home to our office, on the way, if there is some other friend who is also interested in going to the same place, we can drop that person to that particular destination. In that way, we are saving a fuel, that is the petrol, probably the compressed natural gas or the diesel. We are saving our natural resources, which are exhaustible in nature. There should be a change in the personal attitude and the practices towards the environment. What do? We probably eat something and we pick up the wrapper and throw it down on the road. What are we doing? We're just contaminating our environment. We're just polluting our environment. A plastic takes more than 100 years to go ahead and actually decompose. So if we actually eating something and it is a plastic that is thrown away, we are actually contaminating our land. So the question what we have to ask ourselves, what can be done to go ahead and conserve our resources? It is very important that we go ahead and use our resources very carefully. For an instance, all right, say you are stuck at a place, all right, and you just have 500 rupees on you. That 500 rupees that you have to also use to go ahead and reach to your place and probably survive for 2 days. And the total traveling that would cost you roughly around 400 rupees. So you just left with just 100 rupees for your survival for 2 days. What would you do? You'll have to probably drink and water from taps and probably eat something that would actually fit into your budget. Or probably if you use that 500 rupees for your survival for 2 days, either you have to come home walking or probably you have to ask for a lift. Alright? So what are we doing? If we in each situation that we are using 400 rupees for traveling and 100 rupees for our survival, for our eating, if we are doing that, we're basically conserving our resource. Money is a resource in this particular situation. So it is very important that we use our resources very carefully and giving them, and you also have to give them the required amount of time to get renewed. Okay, so this particular thing, say using resources carefully and giving them time for renewal is called resource conservation. So what can we do to go ahead and conserve our resources? We can probably make small packets or small bags out of the used clothes or probably newspapers. All these things can be done, and we can actually avoid the usage of plastic. When we're probably charging our mobiles at home, what do? When we just plug in the charger, we charge the phone, and once it is done, we just remove the phone from the charger, but the plug is left switch on. If that is happening, what are we doing? It is still on the standby mode, alright, but it is still using up the electricity. One, you're wasting the electricity. Second, you're wasting your money. Alright. Then the third one that we're going to talk about is water. Okay. A leaking tap in your house. Probably you might just think it is just two or three drops of water that is leaking. But throughout the day, for 24 hours, you might not even know how many liters of water is being wasted. So water is precious. Recently during summer we had like a lot of areas that did not even have ample amount of water supply. That is happening because we are not using the appropriate measures. We can also use rain harvesting. We can actually ensure that water is not wasted. Let's quickly revise the whole chapter. We spoke about resources in this chapter. We spoke about the different types of resources. We spoke about the sustainable development, and we also spoke about the conservation of resources. Okay. What is a resource? Anything that is used to go ahead and satisfy a human need is basically called as a resource. Okay. But it should have a utility and it should have a value to it. Alright. Now, probably medicine, your grandma's medicine might not have an economic value as of now. A beautiful landscape will not have an economic value, but electricity has an economic value because you pay your bills, right? So that is what a resource is all about. Then we spoke about the different types of resources. One is natural, one is human-made, and one is human. Natural resources are those resources that is a free gift of nature to us, that is freely available to us. Alright? And that we had further 4 subdivisions. One is exhaustibility, one is origin, one is development and use.
Choose the right kindergarten, a right bag, and matching bottle to go with. The right school, the right friends. Choose the right subjects and score well. Be an expert in all. The right teacher, and make sure that they like you. Choose the right timing, the right bus, and take a cab if getting late. The right train, and don't stand near the gates. Mind the pockets. Better get into ladies' compartment, and make sure your mustache hasn't started coming. Choose the right study time and forget games. IPL, IHL, rock and metal, guitar, axe. The right group. and be a model to your brother. Seriously. Choose the right syllabus, the right test paper. Keep guessing questions for exams. Choose the right branch, the right college, the right stream. Choose the right career. Lucky to have a father's business to take care of and a father to allow that. The right counselor, the right form, and make sure the project is submitted on time. Choose the right website and rely on your friends for more information. Oblivious of the sites they have been to, there is no end to your woes. Getting better with every step you climb up the ladder. The summer vacation shorter, the bucket list bigger, the night darker, the books heavier. The only light you have is your friends ahead of you. Probably he is right. Ever thought how he got the direction? No more spending your energy and money on coaching classes. No more missing classes for rain, rally, and nonsense. Get your interest back in subjects through our creative ways of teaching. Doubts, concepts, applications, all explained through one vibrant animation. Subjects covered by multiple teachers with repeat telecasts. Special programs only for basic foundation and paper analysis. Personality development, career counseling, admissions, hobbies, all covered. A new approach to study with long-term perspective. So sit back comfortably in your homes and watch Study Spectrum TV channel.
Now quickly let us revise the types of resources. The types of resources can be divided into natural resources, human-made, and human. Natural resources can be further subdivided into 4 types. The first one is the exhaustibility, second is development and use, third is origin, and the fourth is the distribution. Okay, let's talk about the natural resources and the division called exhaustibility. Exhaustibility, as I've already discussed, it is further subdivided into renewable and non-renewable. The term renewable means it is reproduced by physical or chemical processes. Okay, like the electricity that we have, the wind energy, all these are renewable. The non-renewable are something that takes a long period of time, probably the hundreds of millions of years over a geological period of time, like the petrol that we have. The second one that we have already discussed is the development and the use. One is a potential resource, second is the actual resource. The actual resource is something that we already know the quantity and it is already put into use. And the potential resource is something that we do not have the exact quantity with us and neither it is put into use. Alright. The third subdivision into natural resources is the origin that we have discussed. Into origin, we have discussed these further 2 subdivisions, that is biotic and abiotic. Okay, biotic resources is basically living organisms, that is the animals, human lives, and plants. And abiotic is probably the rock, stone, roads, building, all non-living things. Then the fourth classification under natural resources is the distribution. The first one under that is ubiquitous and the localized. Alright, ubiquitous means anything that is found everywhere, probably a resource that is found everywhere. The air that we breathe, the sunlight that we have, it is found everywhere. Then the localized, something that is found at a specific area or a specific location. Alright, like probably we have the iron deposits as a specific area. Okay, that's how we complete the classification of natural resources. Now let's move on to the second type of resource, that is human-made. We have already discussed human-made as something that is made by humans. Alright. Now, iron ore, I've already explained, it has to be extracted so that we get iron. So how do we get it? Based on the technology that people have developed. So iron is we extract iron from iron ore based on the existing technology that we have with the skill set that we have. So basically we have this human-made resources. Iron is used to go ahead and make buildings, factories, roads. So this is human-made resources. Now, we already discussed what is human resources. Human resource is we as people, alright? Education and health facilities, all these actually help to go ahead and improve the quality of human resource. When the quality of human resource is improved, then the technology and the standard of living, all these things also improve, and that is what we have already discussed is known as human resource development. The next we're going to talk about is the sustainable development. You might be asked a question in your exams, what do you mean by sustainable development? The answer to that, if it is in short, then you have to give the definition, that is balancing the need to use the existing resources and also conserve them for the future, is known as sustainable development. How can we go ahead and take care of the sustainable development? You have to respect each and every forms. You have to improve the quality of human life. You have to conserve Mother Nature, the environment, and most importantly, you have to think there has to be a change in the mindset or the attitude of people, right? That is how we can actually ensure that sustainable development takes place. But now, if you get a question about how do we conserve our resources, in that case, let's quickly revise the conservation of resources that we have discussed. 1, we minimize the use of plastic. Second, if any equipment is put onto a standby mode, we are actually losing out on electricity. We switch it off, we conserve electricity. A leaking tap, we're gonna shut it down. If we are gonna take care of the tap, we're gonna call the concerned person and get it repaired or replaced to help us conserve water. The fourth and the most important type, instead of probably using papers or probably plastics, what we can do is the old or the discarded clothes, we can go ahead and use that to go ahead and conserve nature. Instead of just throwing out paper, for paper we do cut trees, that is deforestation. Instead of that, we do go ahead and do afforestation. We plant more and more trees. Now let us go ahead and quickly go through the questions in your textbook, right? The first question that your textbook talks about, why are the resources distributed unequally over the earth? Okay. Now, the answer to that would be the distribution of the natural resources depends upon the number of physical factors, like probably the climatic condition, the height, the altitude, and the distribution of the resources. It will not be the same. Because of this, the factors actually, or the resources are different. Probably the wheat that is cultivated on the northern side will not be the same if we look at the Assam. Assam is well known for tea. So the resources that is actually there for Assam to go ahead and grow tea and coffee is good. And if you try to go ahead and probably grow that tea and coffee in the northern area, that's not going to happen because the resources are different, the climatic conditions are different. So probably the crops that we grow is going to be different. The next question that your textbook talks about is the resource conservation. The term conservation is probably means using it carefully in such a manner that we have something left for our future. So the answer to this question would be using your resources carefully and giving them time to go ahead and renewed and replaced over a period of time is known as resource conservation. The third question that we're going to discuss about is why are the human resources important? Human, as we have already discussed, are an important resource of any nation or any country, okay, or probably any region. These people can make the best use of the existing technology, or probably with their educational background, with their educational help, they can use or probably create more new resources. And when they have the knowledge and skill to go ahead and the technology to do so, then they can go ahead and probably get the new and new things, and that will help the humankind. That is why human resources or humankind is known as a very unique and important resource. The next question that we're going to discuss about what is sustainable development. As we have already discussed, sustainable development means balancing the need to use existing resources and also conserving them for the future is known as sustainable development. The next question that your textbook talks about is differentiate between the following. That is basically distinguish between the following. The first one is potential resources and actual resources. What does the term potential resources mean? They, there are 3 points that you can actually pen down. Probably the first one, the entire quantity for potential resources are not known. For actual resources, the quantity is known. The second point for potential resources that you can jot down is these resources are not presently put to use. For actual resources, these resources are actually put to use. Example of potential resources is the uranium found in Ladakh. And the example that you can put down for actual resources is the dark soils on the Deccan Plateau of Maharashtra is the actual resource. The second distinguish between that your textbook talks about is the ubiquitous and localized resource. There are just 2 points into this distinguish between is the ubiquitous means the resources that are found everywhere, and localized means anything that is found locally, like resources. Ubiquitous, for that you can put down the example of the earth and the sunlight that we have that is found everywhere. For localized resources, you can jot down examples of copper and iron. In this entire chapter, we have discussed all the resources, the types of resources, the conservation of resources, and that's how we have completed our chapter, that is resources.